So I just finished the TED Talk with Niall Ferguson, whose talk was on the 6 killer apps of prosperity. Those 6 killer apps are, which I'm going to try to do from memory as best as I can while driving, are competition, technological innovation, property rights, modern medicine, consumerism, and work ethic. So he was a big proponent of Adam Smith. He did a lot of compare and contrast of the East and the West. Why was the West so dominant for such an extended period of time? And why was the West so poor? Adam Smith kind of documented this and said that essentially, and Niall kind of boiled it down into those 6 key ingredients that made a nation wealthy relative to another nation. So a couple of thoughts I had on this. It makes you want to ask the question, like, well, is it a zero-sum game, where meaning as my advance means the diminishment of you. The more I have, the less you have. That was one of the questions that I wonder about. What about the question of, even though a nation might become wealthy, does that necessarily mean that the individuals are wealthy? Adam Smith said that this wealth that accumulated over time in a nation, wealth, we tend to think of wealth in terms of money, but money isn't really the means of wealth. And that's what Adam Smith was trying to say. Adam Smith was saying that wealth of a nation actually comes from the labors of the people. It comes from the wants. And consumerism was another killer app. I just now realized that. I remember that. Maybe I said that. That our wants and desires embody the means to create an economy by the exchange of goods and services to the prosperity of everyone. Money is just the means of exchanging those wants, those desires, those needs. But in a society that's very competitive and very I don't know. That doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to be wealthy. I mean, it means that a lot of times they're going to be broke and poor. I see he was saying is that, if you looked at the West, Europe, compared to China, India, Latin America, during the early part of the 19th century, there was a huge wealth disparity between them up until recently, and you have the emergence of China, and as China emerges, as well as India, what are they doing? They're putting together, working hard to develop technologies, to develop things that other people want, and people are willing to exchange whatever they have in order to obtain those things. Within our own society, the way wealth is created is by the creation of those things and those exchange of those goods and services. So if you want to build, and I guess let's really sum it up, the easiest way to build wealth is to build up things that people are willing to exchange for. I guess what I have trouble trying to understand is in a society where most of our needs are met, we're left with wants, and all those wants are not always obtainable. What then is there? What then is left to achieve? If you look at the whole idea of like marketing exists because either to get the idea out or to instill in the consumers the need for something that they might not need or might not even want, but you instill that in them. Like, look at beauty products and fashion and stuff like that. People probably wouldn't want that stuff if there wasn't someone flashing it around and instilling that desire and that want and that need in them. So it's kind of like marketing is good in that regards, but it's kind of like, does it have to be that way? And is that a good thing? The other thing that he talked about is a nation, a civilization is built upon its laws and its institutions. This is what defined the West versus the East. You had these laws and reasons, or institutions based upon reason rather than based upon just the will of a lord or a king or somebody like that. And it makes me wonder about kind of our current society. Could our laws serve a purpose to create greater value? I think like the easiest thing I can think of to show an application is like the whole patent laws over software rights. So the biggest foreground, or the biggest ground for creation of new ideas and innovating things, and of a tool that can be easily exchanged, because all other tools seem to be, we seem to run out of ideas on what else to invent for all these other things, would be in the software realm. But yet it's so easy to take those ideas and to take those tools that it becomes very challenging to actually to make money out of it. I mean, like, I could think of a lot of software ideas that I could spend a great deal of time working, but yet I wouldn't see the return on the investment. Or maybe I would. Maybe that's what I should do. I don't know. But it seems like we get so bogged down. It seems like most of the people in IT would say, though, that patent law is actually a hindrance to technology and innovation. And that's what we want, even though the greater question is, well, how do you make money off of in the new society? With open source software and like Wikipedia, where knowledge is shared openly, ideas are encouraged and shared. Is there a point? My questions about capitalism is like, is there a point where you can no longer innovate or provide new products or services to meet the demands of the people? And so if you look at the economic, any economic model, the biggest scarcity is not people. It's not an issue of supply and demand. Is the key ingredient is the scarcity of natural resources. Looking back at the older days, like colonialism, well, if they needed natural resources, the easiest and cheapest way to get it was to just march into another environment, another land, and take it. If you needed cheap labor, you went and got it. You created slaves out of people, and that's the part that, prosperity for who is the question that it makes me wonder about. You'd think of the U.S. as being extremely wealthy during the 1800s, but it was built on the back of slaves. You look at Egypt. It was built on the back of slaves. We'd say Egypt was a great society, but it was, and we look at the pyramids, and we look at these buildings, and we thought, oh, how great and wonderful they were. But yet that was, only a very few actually possessed those great pyramids and those great buildings. Probably the majority of them lived in destitution and poverty, and lived in some form of slavery. And it kind of feels that way even now within our society, where the middle class is kind of being wiped out because of, what's the demand left? We can all think of ideas of things that we would like to achieve, but there's just not any money being pumped in it. We look at corporations, and it feels like they're not producing anything. They are in a a way, but like it just sounds like there are ways to just trying to get more money out of people without actually innovating. You know, what are we innovating in our society? You know, our banks are coming up with creative ways of manipulating money. I mean, credit default swaps. How is that somehow beneficial to other people? It's just like a way of slicing and dicing money and spreading and hiding it and leveraging risk and stuff like that. I mean, it doesn't. Is that really providing a value to society? It doesn't seem that way. You know, insurance. You know, you look at these things. I'm like, insurance just looks as a way to make money. It doesn't provide. I mean, it does provide people coverage in the event of accidents, but that was just kind of a manufactured field, and it's huge. Insurance is huge. Same with like lawyers. I mean, all the lawyers. It seems like you pay more in defending a patent than you do actually inventing new technologies. So, what's the way to correct this? Is there a remedy for it? And can you do that without creating a huge divide where people are forced to, you know, from poverty and out of necessity to invent, to achieve greater tools? So I know this is a lot of rambling. It's just it's a confusing question that bothers me, because it feels like that's what we're in the midst of it, and it seems like that's what's all going on around us. So it keeps my mind going and wondering is, you know, is the West inevitably doomed? Are we doomed as a world, or is there a way that we can, you know, create laws and create institutions that bring about prosperity equally for all, and maybe not even equally, but brings about greater prosperity overall? So, I don't know. I would love to hear answers to those questions from Niall. So, anyways, thanks for listening.